Hello everybody, welcome to Psych Academy. This is AJ sir and today we have a special practice session with 30 PYQs from Teaching Aptitude. Our target is JRF 2026. Instructions is that try answering by yourself before explanations. This is very important. Try to do it by yourselves. 20 seconds will be provided for each question. 20 seconds is enough to answer most of them. For the ones that are a bit longer, I will provide 30 seconds. Keep note of the incorrect answers. This one is very important. We have to remember that. And even for correct answers, do listen to the explanations. They will help you understand better and give you clues for more questions in the future. Repeat later and evaluate progress. That is, once you have taken the test, done the practice session, if there are questions that you couldn't get right, come back to it a few days later or a few weeks later and check your progress. That's the simplest of instructions. So let's start. Which of the following are examples of scaffolding? A. Providing hints and clues to solve a problem. B. Allowing students to figure out the problem on their own. C. Providing students with the solution to a problem. D. Asking leading questions to guide their thinking. Your timer is running. So 20 seconds, they will start when a question is presented. Even when I am repeating the question, 20 seconds are on. Okay. So out here, let's look at each of the answers. Providing hints and clues to solve a problem. This is correct because scaffolding is a concept by Lev Vygotsky which states that the best way to help children is not by giving them answers. It is by allowing them to try some things by themselves, and when the children are unable to solve the problems entirely by themselves, then the adults or superiors should just give a bit of hints. Hints will only direct the children towards the solution, but not giving them the solution. It is still making them working better and help them develop. It is better because if the children is left alone, their learning will reach to only a level, the point at which they are currently at. It will not improve. But if you give them answers, they are just memorizing the answers without understanding it, which is why you need to give them hints. So providing hints and clues, correct. Allowing students to figure out the problem on their own. Well, if this was the case, then we wouldn't need scaffolding. Scaffolding is the extra help. Providing students with solution to a problem, not at all. That is not what we are trying to do. Asking leading questions to guide their thinking. Leading questions are like hints. That a question which directs their thinking. So answer would be A and D only. This is option B. Next question. Match list 1 with list 2. Factual, conceptual, procedural and metacognitive. How to do something, methods of inquiry, basic elements required to be acquainted with a discipline, knowledge of one's own cognition, interrelationships among the basic elements within a larger structure. So, let's look at metacognitive. Metacognitive is the easiest to understand. It is the definition of metacognition is knowledge of own cognition, right? This is the definition. So A has to be 3. We see A3, there is only one option with A3. So even before deriving, we already know C is the answer. We'll still check. So factual. Factual is basic elements required to be acquainted with the discipline, right? Because so D is 3. Wait. Exactly. D is 3. D3 how many? This one, yes. D3. So this is the correct answer. D is 3. Now factual is basic elements required to be acquainted with a discipline. The basic facts that you need to remember, which is what we are just memorizing the concepts at that level. Then we have conceptual. Concepts, interrelationships among basic elements. That is, at this point we are not only So for example, understand, so basic elements means like elements of the periodic table. hydrogen, oxygen, boron, carbon, all of these are there. But when you realize how they react with each other, that is the interrelationships. So conceptual. Procedural is how to actually do things, the process of doing things. So C1, how to do something, methods of inquiry, and how to use skills, basically the practical part of it, how exactly we are doing things. So C is procedural, C1, A2, B4, C1 and D3. Arrange the stages of development by Jean Piaget in ascending order. Concrete operational, pre-operational, sensory motor and formal operational. This is very easy for this 20 seconds only. Sensory motor is the first, 0 to 2 years. Then we have pre-operational, 2 to 7 years. Then concrete operational, 7 to 11 years. Then formal operational, 11 years and above. So we have C, B, A, D. C, B, A, D, option B. Nothing much to explain out here. This is just the names of the stages of the theory. The quality of one's memory can generally be judged on the basis of his or her A, power of retention, B, analytical ability, C, communication skills, D, mathematical numeracy. Again, extremely easy question. Power of retention, because retention is about retaining, means holding the information for a long time. Analytical ability, this is not just memory, this is your intelligence, this is your ability to critically think. Communication skills, again language understanding, ways of communication, emotional intelligence, all of those come in. Mathematical numeracy, this is again about mathematical intelligence. Numerical intelligence does not have to be about simply memorizing things. So option A, power of retention. Statement 1. Vygotsky emphasized the significant roles played by adults and more able peers in children's learning. 2. The zone of proximal development is in the area where the child solves the problem alone without the help of others. So the correct answer out here is statement 1 is true and 2 are false. No, not this one. Statement 1 is true and 2 is false. That is, Vygotsky did emphasize significant roles played by adults. We just discussed how that is important about helping the children but not giving them the solutions. Statement 2, so statement 1 is correct. Zone of proximal development is in the area where child solves a problem alone without the help of others. So if the child is not requiring the help of others, then why do we need the adults and more able peers? That is not the zone of proximal development. Zone of proximal development is that area where the child is able to progress a lot more with a bit of help, not that they don't require help. So statement 2 is false. Statement 1. Automaticity is the processing of information with more effort. Statement 2. Strategy construction is the discovery of new procedures for processing information. This is easy. Even if you don't know the answer, you can easily derive it. Automaticity is the processing of information with more effort. Not at all. Automatic means it does not require effort. It is happening almost by itself. So statement 1 is incorrect. Statement 2. Strategy construction is the discovery of new procedures for processing information. This can easily be the case. That is, for example, let's say you decide that you have to, so how do we make strategies? So for example, let's say for OCD, we can either try to measure someone's OCD by questionnaires, or we can also try to measure it by how much time they are spending for the compulsive tasks that they are doing. We can also try to measure it by how much their personal relationships with others are getting affected. So there are many ways of looking at it. So for example, you can measure the worth of a job in terms of the salary. You can also try to measure that how much free time you get from that job. So this free time versus salary, this personal distress versus how much time spent, this is all just different ways of processing the same information, which is why strategic construction is the discovery of procedures for processing information in a better way. It has other aspects too, but this is also important. So statement 2. So statement 1 is false, but statement 2 is true. That is option D. Which of the following is a major objective of education? A. Developing economy. B. Making students disciplined. C. Developing inherent abilities or powers of the students. D. Making students followers of the teachers. Okay, this is very easy. This is too easy. Of course, option C. Developing inherent abilities and powers of the students. Not about making students disciplined. See, and one of the things that we have to understand when we are answering questions of teaching aptitude is that we have to think about the role of a teacher and the role of education in the most idealistic manner possible. So don't always try to just think of what has happened in your schools or what your teachers may have personally stated or acted like. It is about the ideal situation. And the ideal situation is not about making students disciplined. It is about making students capable. Discipline may be there, but it is there so that students become capable. Making students followers of teachers, this is the opposite of what we should try to do. Students should not be our followers. They should have their own thinking. And if their thinking has valid points against us, they should be able to say that too. Developing the economy. Well, that is an important goal, of course, a very important goal. But developing economy would be for a very specific area. We are not trying to give primary education, secondary education based on developing economy. For economy, we have skills training that reduce unemployment. We have research work, we have financial planning and all of those things. But all kinds of education is not geared for economy. It is for abilities and powers of the students. The 4 R's to conflict resolution in conflict resolution classroom comprises reading, writing, respect, reprimand, resolution. And then you have the options. One thing that I have mentioned before, and I'll again provide as a hint of how to solve the question, is that think of it in the most idealistic of manners. Not only about how practically what has happened in your own school, idealistic manners. So if we think about that, what we get? That reprimand is not something that is ideally supposed to be there. Teachers are not supposed to be scolding or hitting or anything to the child. They are supposed to be explaining and making the concepts a lot clearer and more significant to the students. It is the teacher's job to gain attention and to hold that attention in an idealistic scenario. So reprimand cannot be here. D is not there. So A, B, C and E, as you can already see that you have to choose at least 4. So if we take away D, A, B, C and E only. Match the lists: sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, formal operational. And then we have all the age ranges. Begins about the first grade, adolescent to adulthood, 0 to 2 years. Begins about the time the child starts talking to 7 years old. We just discussed these 4 stages and their associated age ranges. So I hope that will help all of you. Sensory motor, this is 0 to 2 years. Okay, so A3 we already know. Okay, there is only one option with A3. Why are they making these so easy? A3. Pre-operational is 2 to 7. So begins about the time the child starts talking to about 7 years old. So B4. Concrete operational 7 to 11 years old, and formal operational till adulthood. The zone of proximal development was proposed by, we just discussed this, we literally just discussed this. Zone of proximal development was proposed by whom? A. Piaget, B. Freud, C. Vygotsky, D. Bloom. By Vygotsky. Piaget is stages of cognitive development. Freud is getting psychoanalytic and unconscious. Bloom is the objectives of teaching and the levels of teaching. In which level of teaching the main focus is laid on capturing a systematic presentation of ideas and information? Memory level, understanding level, reflective level, autonomous development level. These are the 4 levels of learning. So the correct answer out here is memory level, because in memory level a child is, or the student is expected to mostly rote memorize information with a very basic rudimentary understanding. So in that case, systematic presentation is extremely important. At the understanding level, the student is now trying to clarify concepts, trying to use examples, trying to get into the details of the theory. Reflective, this is where the teacher has less role, learner has a more active role. They are going on thinking about it, critically evaluating the idea, finding out the advantages, disadvantages of the idea. Autonomous development level, this does not require the teacher at all. This is when for very little children, for example, learning to walk, learning to talk, the development happens as a learning happens as a process of their biological development. Teacher does not have a lot of role over here. So it is memory level. Presentation of facts, extremely systematic organizations, these are all hints for memory level. Which theory of learning supports reflective level of teaching? A. Conditioning theory, B. Reinforcement theory, C. Need reduction theory, D. Cognitive field theory. Okay, the correct answer is cognitive field theory, because conditioning, it is not about levels of teaching. Conditioning happens almost by itself. Reflexive responses, not something that is happening in a classroom. Reinforcement theory, this states that if you give somebody rewards for whatever they are doing, they will do it more. If you give them punishment, they will do it less. So this is teaching by punishment and rewards, but that is not reflective. Reflective means that you have to actually think about it, critically evaluate it. Classical conditioning is just basic reflex actions. Need reduction theory, this is a biological motivation theory, that basically we have a need, let's say hunger or thirst. Whatever we do, for example eat or drink, that reduces the need of hunger or thirst, we want to do it more. As simple as that. We don't want to feel thirst, we do something, drinking water, that reduces the need of thirst, and hence we are more likely to drink water often because it reduces the need of the thirst. But it does not have a lot of idea about critically evaluating things or high intelligence. So cognitive field theory, it talks about the levels of teaching. It actually, cognitive field theory does not talk about the levels of teaching, it supports the levels of teaching. That is, there are different levels of teaching at which the teacher can interact with the students. Again, match the list. Autonomous development, memory level, understanding level, reflective level. Problem centered and requires active participation by the learners. We just discussed these things. Focuses on students' feelings and minimizes hard thinking. Comparatively thoughtless, seeing relationships between principles. Which one will this be? Reflective level is the critical evaluation one, right? And problem centered and requires active participation by the learners. Active participation. This talk clearly hints at reflective or understanding, mostly reflective. So D1, we anyway have only one option with D1. Let's look at autonomous development level. This is where the it is mostly on the feelings of the students, because again, as we discussed, like very little children learning how to walk, how to talk, how to how to color within lines, those parts. So A is 2. Memory level, comparatively thoughtless compared to the other ones, and understanding level, seeing relationships between principles, that is C4. Which of the following intellectual characteristics in a teacher need nurturing in order to accomplish subjective well-being leading to effectiveness in motivating students? Cognitive intelligence, emotional intelligence, social intelligence, spiritual intelligence. This one is also very easy if you just think about it for a while. Subjective well-being is the technical term for happiness. That's the simple way of looking at it. So basically, what kind of characteristic or intelligence does a teacher need to have to ensure that students are happy and motivated? Not cognitive. Cognitive is the basic kind that we talk about. Social intelligence, yes, social intelligence is important, but it is just about how to understand and talk to others, not always about empathically being able to connect. And social intelligence is a part of emotional intelligence. Okay, understanding the emotions and motivate them, not just communicate, motivate them, make them interested. So B, spiritual intelligence. This is more related to reflective level of teaching, where you are understanding spirituality, but that is not something that can be applied to other levels of teaching for younger children. What can be universally applied is subjective well-being. And spiritual intelligence does not always lead to motivation. Sometimes it can lead to different questions which can demotivate a student. In which level of teaching is the teacher's role more active than interactive? Okay, this is very easy. A, memory level, B, understanding level, C, reflective level, D, autonomous development level. It is the memory level, because at the reflective level and the autonomous development level, teacher has very little role. The teacher is not doing things. Autonomous development level, child is learning basic things. Reflective level, student is learning by evaluating things themselves. Understanding level, it is interactive. Understanding level is interactive. That is, the teacher and student discuss, they summarize, they paraphrase each other's words. They are getting the concepts clear. At the memory level, student is only rote memorizing and the teacher is more active. Please subscribe to the channel for regular lessons, soft PYQs, exam updates and strategies and tips, also updates for the course. Please remember to type or click the bell icon, that is all notifications, otherwise you will miss out on important notifications and will not get updates about all the videos. So while you are subscribing, just click on it and press the bell icon, the all one, not the other ones. In which level of teaching the learner gets an opportunity to discriminate at length between positive and negative exemplars of concepts? A, memory level, B, understanding level, C, reflective level, D, autonomous development level. It is the understanding level, because the learner gets opportunity to discriminate at length between positive and negative exemplars. Positive and negative exemplars means examples that support the theory and examples that criticize the theory. So that is at the understanding level. Reflective level is not about examples. It is, so the easy way to understand is this, that to differentiate between understanding and reflective level is, at the understanding level, whatever we are discussing, is it something that can be found in books? So positive examples, negative examples, many different kinds of examples, this can be found in books. This can be found in other research papers and all of those things. So which means that it can happen from the outside. You can receive this learning from external information and hence it is understanding level. Reflective level does not come from outside. It is when We are thinking about it ourselves and creating new ways of understanding the concept. It is not about exemplars. Examples are understanding level. During teaching, a teacher statements that encourage students to elaborate on an answer, either of their own or that of others, is called structuring, instructional variety, engagement in learning process, and probing. This would be probing, because structuring is not about questioning. It is simply about making the curriculum more structured. Instructional variety, it means that you are using different kinds of ways to teach. Probing can be one way of teaching, but instructional variety has many other ways of teaching which does not include directly questioning the students. Engagement in the learning process. Yes, asking questions can be one of the ways to engage students in learning, but you can do it by showing videos also. You can do it by experiments, by demonstrations, not necessarily about questions. But questions are probing. Probing, the term means to find something or to get inside something and seeing what's inside. So probing is something like that you ask a question to get into the students' heads to understand have they or have they not properly got the concept at a deeper level. For use during teaching, identify questions that are process type rather than content type. Divergent questions, fact-based questions, concept-based questions, lower order questions, higher order questions. This you can easily get if you just focus on two parts. I'll give a hint. Process type means a lot of thinking is involved. Content type means just rote memorization of facts. So now, which would be the answer? Divergent questions. Divergent means thinking of many possible solutions or many possible ideas from one idea. That is divergent. So it is not just about memorizing facts. It is you finding out new and new ideas. So divergent thinking would be process type. Fact-based questions, just facts. So this will not be a process type. This is a content type. Concept-based questions, understanding-based. So yes, this is process type. Lower order questions. Lower order means ones that do not require a lot of thinking. Again, fact-based. So this is not process type. Higher order question is just the opposite, understanding-based. So E is process type questions. So A, C and E. Do we have an option? Yes. Option A is A, C and E. Which of the following describe understanding level teaching? Okay. Systematic step-by-step presentation to promote recitation of facts presented. Giving a large number of positive and negative exemplars. Insisting on effective storage of information. Helping to promote seeing of relationships among facts. Critical sifting of facts and information. We just discussed this, so this should be an easy one. Systematic step-by-step presentation to promote recitation of facts. This is not what we are looking for. We want understanding level at this point. So option 1 is not there. Giving a large number of positive and negative exemplars. We just discussed this would be the case for understanding. Effective storage of information, just storing information. Helping to promote seeing of relationships among facts, going beyond the facts. So yes, this is part of understanding level. Critical sifting of facts and information. Now critical sifting, it can be understanding, it can be reflective. It is actually a part of both. It depends on the situation. So in this case, since you cannot choose 2, 4 and 5, and anyway 5 is not given anywhere in the options, so correct answer is 2 and 4 only. That is option D. Assertion. Pedagogy and social interaction are two major result-oriented activities of a teacher. Reasoning. Communication has a limited role in both these activities. Both are correct and R is the correct explanation. B, both are correct but R is not the correct explanation. C, A is correct, R is incorrect. D, A is incorrect but R is correct. Pedagogy and social interaction are two major result-oriented activities of a teacher. This is true. Pedagogy is the science of education, science of how to effectively teach children. Gogy, it is about educating, and peda, it comes from children, like pediatrician, pediatrics, so of children, how to teach children. Social interaction, of course, it is very important for about understanding and reflective level, where you are how you communicate with the students is depending on how well they learn. Communication has a limited role in both these activities. How can this ever be true? How can communication have a limited role in any kind of teaching? Yeah, autonomous development level, not so much. But other than that, communication of course has a huge role. So A is correct but R is incorrect. In fact, the moment you see reasoning, you know this has to be false. So there is only one option that says R is incorrect, that is option C. Okay, this is a long one, so you will get more than 30 seconds for this question. Which of the following will be considered key teaching behavior belonging to the category of effectiveness? A. Making ideas clear to learners who may be at different levels of understanding. B. Showing enthusiasm and animation through variation in eye contact, voice and gestures. C. Using student ideas by acknowledging and summarizing. D. Probing through general questions and shifting a discussion to some higher thought level. E. Using meaningful verbal praise to get and keep students actively participating in the learning process. And now you have the options. So you get 10 more seconds. It will be very easy if you just think of the teacher's role out here. So now how we will try to understand is that how effective is the teacher, that is what are the areas where teacher's role is extremely important. Now, making ideas clear to learners who may be at different levels of understanding. Of course, this is a role of the teacher. This is why teachers are required, otherwise textbooks would have sufficed. Showing enthusiasm and animation through variation in eye contact, voice and gestures. Communication, especially important for young students, where the way the teacher is presenting becomes very important in how they understand it. Using student ideas by acknowledging and summarizing. Now, using student ideas, it may be an important skill and it can work very well, but this is not part of the efficiency of the teacher. The teacher has to be able to explain things even without the requirement of students' ideas. And as we can already see that we can only have 3 options, right? So we have to do some elimination. Probing through general questions and shifting a discussion to some higher thought level. Now you see these two, C and D, this is not about explaining to the students. This is not about getting students motivated. This is about ensuring that the students have understood. You are probing questions to ensure that the students have understood. But this is not part of directly explaining a concept or teaching. Using meaningful verbal praise to get and keep students actively participating in the learning process. This is important because you have to get students participating and motivated in the learning process. This is again something that the teacher is doing. This is not about verifying if the student has learned. This is ensuring that the student has learned. So A, B and E, they ensure learning. C and D, they verify learning if the student has understood, and hence option is A, B and E only, that is option B. When the learning outcomes of students are ensured with employment of less resources and effort on the part of a teacher and more initiative for self-learning is evident, which of the following expression will describe the teacher most appropriately? Teacher is successful or effective or intelligent or practical. Now, the easy way to understand this is, whatever we are doing, learning outcomes of the students, this is the primary goal. Whatever the learning outcomes are, whatever a student is supposed to achieve after the training or education or course, that is the ultimate goal. So the moment learning outcomes of students are ensured, however be the case, as long as it is ensured by the efforts of the teacher, a teacher is considered to have been great at their job, and the technical term for that is that teacher is effective, not successful. Successful, yeah, but effective is considered to be the technical term. Intelligent, not every intelligent teacher is effective in the classroom. The difference between a good student and a good teacher. Teacher is practical. Okay, the teacher may be practical, but that does not ensure that the students will learn. Effectiveness is what ensures the student will learn. And this teacher, this example has been extremely successful. They are extremely effective. They are using less resources, did not use a lot of resources, saved a lot of funding for the school or college, and more initiative for self-learning. So students are interested and now want to learn by themselves. So this is a hugely effective teacher. So B, teacher is effective. Listening is important for a teacher to A, address the requirement of a learner, B, gain knowledge, C, keep the learner in good humor, D, evaluate the learner for the progress made. This is easy actually. Again, the same idea. Think about it in an idealistic manner. What exactly is listening important for? It is important for addressing the requirement of the learner. Not about gaining knowledge. Teacher is not gaining knowledge. Teacher is giving knowledge. I mean, yeah, of course, teacher also gains knowledge through learners' questions and through learners' ideas. That is true. That is always the case. But that is still at a higher level of teaching and student relationship. At the primary levels, you are going to a class 5 level school. Teacher is usually not gaining a lot of knowledge, and if they are, that is not ideal. Keep the learner in good humor. Well, this is important, but even more than good humor, what we really need is to address their needs. If sometimes their need is that they should get a bit of tiny punishment and get disciplined, then yes, that is required. Evaluate the learner for the progress made. Evaluation is standardized. It is not about how exactly the problem is there, and while evaluation is important, a learner can face many problems. Maybe they are having difficulty in a particular concept, maybe they are being bullied, maybe somehow they are not being able to gel up with the class. Many things can happen. So address the requirement of a learner, whatever the requirement may be. Maybe simply the learner wants the class to progress a little slower than normal. That is also something that the teacher has to address. Reflective practice implies use of one's cognition, metacognition on cognition, and reinforcement of learning. This is easy. It implies the use of one's metacognition. Reflective means thinking with ourselves, thinking about ourselves and our own concepts. Cognition is simply knowing and thinking. Metacognition is critically evaluating what we have thought of, what we understand. And metacognition is one of the important factors or characteristics of reflective practice. Okay, whenever you see metacognition, remember it will be reflective. Okay, metacognition on cognition. This is not something that is required. Metacognition on cognition means thinking about our own processes too much, which can help but not the main goal of reflective practice. Reinforcement of learning, this is simple rewards and punishment. It is not about reflective. Reinforcement is more used in the memory level of teaching. Match list 1 with list 2. Memory level, understanding level, reflective level. Encourages critical thinking, based cognitive interchange. Protects personal interests and attitudinal concerns. Yes. Facilitates recalling and recognizing of facts, enhances scope for seeing of relationships and meanings. We just discussed this. We have discussed this quite a few times, so this should be very easy right now. Encourages critical thinking, reflective level, very clearly reflective level, C1. Oh, we have only one option with C1. Memory level, facilitates recalling and recognizing of facts. Facts is memory level. So this is done. Understanding level, enhancing seeing of relationships. So I hope you are starting to get certain terms are associated with certain levels. So relationships, meanings associated with memory level. Facts, so associated with understanding level. Facts associated with memory level. Critical thinking, metacognition associated with reflective level. These words will help you remember which answer which is. Assertion. All teaching should aim at ensuring learning. Reasoning. All learning results from teaching. This is a good one. Very intuitive, very easy, but your concepts need to be clear. A. Both are correct and R is the correct explanation. B. Both are correct but R is not the correct explanation. C. A is correct, R is incorrect. D. A is incorrect, R is correct. The correct answer out here is A is correct but R is incorrect. All teaching should aim at ensuring learning. Of course, this is the goal of teaching, why we teach. All learning results from teaching. No. Somebody can learn by themselves. Somebody can learn from their personal life experiences by watching others who are not trying to directly teach. So this is not true that all learning results from teaching. This part is not true. Which of the following statements best describe the nature and objectives of teaching? Teaching and learning are integrally related. There is no difference between teaching and training. C. Concern of all teaching is to ensure some kind of transformation in students. D. All good teaching is formal in nature. E. A teacher is a senior person. F. Teaching is a social act whereas learning is a personal act. Once again, I would hint at the same hint, that is, think of it in the most idealistic of manners, not just about our school teachers or college professors. Teaching and learning are integrally related. Of course they are. That is why this entire system exists. So option A. There is no difference between teaching and training. This is not true. Because right now, for example, I am teaching, I am not training. Training is about specific skills that you need to have. For example, training for nursing, training for surgery, training for engineering, training for psychometric tests. These are specific skills that you are requiring. So this is teaching and training are not the same. Concern of all teaching is to ensure some kind of transformation is in students. Yes, we want students to be transformed by the teaching, and that is how teaching progress. If the student is not, that is what we say, no, that if somebody has learnt a lot and has a lot of degrees but lacks basic understanding, then we say that their education was ineffective. Why do we say that? Because the transformation, the change has to be visible in the students, not just in the number of items they have remembered. All good teaching is formal in nature. Of course not. You can learn many things from your house, from your parents. So that is not formal. Informally that is happening. A teacher is a senior person. Not always the case. We can learn many things from people who are junior to us, who can give good ideas that we had not thought about before. So this is not always the case. Teaching is a social act where learning is a personal act. Exactly. Because social means other people are involved. Teaching cannot happen by itself. Teaching requires the presence of a student. But learning, that can happen by itself. So A, C and F. Option C. Which of the following statements best describes the nature and objectives of teaching and learning? A. Teaching is like selling and learning is like buying. B. Teaching is a social act while learning is a personal act. C. Teaching implies learning whereas learning does not imply teaching. D. Teaching is delivery of knowledge while learning is receiving of knowledge. E. Teaching is an interaction and is triadic in nature, whereas learning is an active engagement in a subject domain. So you have 10 more seconds. Teaching is like selling and learning is like buying. No. Teaching and learning is not selling and buying. Even if you think about teachers. So in that case, what about informal teachers, people who are teaching you at homes? What about when you are learning by yourself? Then you are not taking anything from somebody else. So always remember, learning can happen by itself, which means that teaching is like selling, learning is like buying. This cannot work. Teaching is delivery of knowledge while learning is receiving of knowledge. This is also not true, because learning is not only about receiving of knowledge. Learning is about understanding, about relationships, about skills training, not just a mere receiving of knowledge. That is memory level learning, but not all other levels. B. Teaching is a social act while learning is a personal act. We just discussed this. Teaching implies learning. Yes, we teach so that somebody can learn. Learning does not imply teaching. This is true, because learning can happen by itself without direct formal teaching. Teaching is an interaction and is triadic in nature. Triadic means it uses multiple processes and procedures. Learning is active engagement in a subject domain. You are actively trying to learn. So E is also correct. B, C, E. Oh, B, C, E. The options are so easy. The moment you figure out that A will not happen, you can see there's only one option where A is not there. Only one option where A is not there. These two are getting out because D is there. So it is becoming very easy. That is the process of elimination that often helps when you are having confusions with a question. Assertion. All teaching implies learning. Reasoning. Learning to be useful must be derived from teaching. We just discussed this. Option A. Both A and R are correct, but R is the correct explanation. B. Both are correct, but R is not the correct explanation. C. A is correct, R is incorrect. D. A is incorrect, but R is correct. We just discussed this. All teaching implies learning, but learning to be useful must be derived for teaching is not true. Learning can happen by itself. So A is correct, but R is incorrect. In which teaching method learners' participation is made optimal and proactive? Discussion method, bus session method, brainstorming method, project method. This is very easy. It is the project method, where the learner has to be very proactive and they are the ones who are doing the job. Discussion method, it can involve the teacher doing a lot of the discussions. Bus session method is again a directed method. Yes, in bus session method, learners do have an active role where they are trying to get some ideas very fast. But again, that does not necessarily have to be, that can be very much guided by the teacher. Brainstorming method, again, it can be very much guided by the teacher. But the project method, the learner is the one who has to decide how to do things, how to do the work, what work to present, and all of these things. So project is where the learner is more optimal and proactive. I hope the session was helpful to everybody, and the explanations too. Please comment down below what are your feelings about the questions, about the choice of questions, about the explanations that are given, what more can be done. So yeah, whatever, reviews, comments, put it on the comment box. Once again, subscribe for more lessons like these and soft PYQs. At the notification, please press the bell icon for all, otherwise you will not receive all the notifications and all the updates that there is. Thank you everybody. Next lesson is 30 PYQs on research aptitude. Next practice session. And these are the courses that we have to offer. Thank you everybody.